Well, I got bored and I was reading some forums up and people trying to defend the recent faults of Tekken 7, on a technical level. And I just felt like I wanted to talk about Tekken 7 today. Because guess who was right about 8th Gen again? uh, so, in case you haven't noticed yet, Digital Foundry made another video on Tekken 7 talking about the resolution on the console versions. The PS4 Pro is 1080p, but the PS4 base version, or more affectionately known now as the PS4 Amateur, sits at a resolution of 1536 by 864, aka 864p, which is sub 900p. But it gets better. Now we get to the Xbox One version, and oh my god! I want you guys to remember this is 2017. This is 2017. This is almost a whole 4 years after you guys have been defending all the faults of these consoles, right? And resolution gain, all of that. We're still getting 720p games this generation. Now, people want to talk about, that just means that this game is poorly optimized on these consoles. Well, number one, these consoles are PC based. Number two, the arcade version is PC based. Yeah, let's talk about this, because according to the sources, holy shit, of course, according to some of the sources I've read, the ES3 board, which Tekken 7 runs on, is very PC based, having, if these sources are correct though, 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, a non-specific Core i5 CPU, and for its GPU, a GTX 760 with full-on 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM. And all this running on, supposedly, an embedded Windows 7. Now, this game's supposed to be a full 1080p in the arcade version. Now, if you really want to talk about how unoptimized like the PS4 version is, you guys have to realize that there is potentially more RAM available for use on this arcade board because of the extra 2 gigs of RAM on the GPU and how small the Windows 7 embedded is as an OS. Because, in case you've forgotten, the operating systems on both the PS4 and Xbox One are still 3 gigs. And in the case of the PS4, 3.5 gigs. That's right. Remember all those promises you were hyping up of optimizations in the firmware, dropping down the RAM usage and freeing up more resources for the developers? Well, guess what actually happened in that time? The only thing that got freed up on both consoles is half a CPU core. That's it. The RAM got left alone. And in the case of the PS4 Pro, the only way the RAM got freed up was when it got replaced, when a good 1 gigabyte of the GDDR5 VRAM got replaced by a whole gigabyte of DDR3 RAM used for app switching. And even then, that whole gigabyte of freed up GDDR5 RAM got split in two. The first 512 went to gaming resources, but the other 512 that went to the OS UI front buffer for native 4K rendering. That's it. Now, a supposed ninth gen platform like the Switch that recently supposedly had some resources freed up on its firmware to fix some performance issues. But other than that, we're still talking about the 8th gen platforms here. So, yeah. Now, apart from the RAM comparison in the arcade, we also have the GPU. Now, I want you guys to think about this. The PS4's GPU is 1.8 teraflops. Now, the GTX 760 at max is close to 2.4 teraflops. All right? Now, people are probably going to want to say after this that, well, AMD and NVIDIA floating points, they're different. Well, you know what? They also say that NVIDIA flops are better than AMD flops. So going by your accord, that makes the NVIDIA GPU even more powerful than the AMD stuff on these consoles. So maybe you guys should take better precaution before you guys talk about, well, you know, unoptimization and lazy devs in this case again, because this gen is different. This gen is different, okay? These consoles are already well optimized. They really are. All the lessons that we'll learn from previous gens are implied this gen. They don't really have much in the way of new stuff to learn, except for one new thing, and that's only exclusive to mobile and two platforms. Those two platforms, PS4 Pro and the Switch. I'm talking about FP16 or half precision floating point. Now, I'm not saying that this is a game changer, but it can be used if to free up performance, if they figure out a way to use it right. And I'm not talking about like big performance games, but just small enough to just have any kind of performance game at all. At all. PS4 base does not have this. Xbox One does not have this. And now it's confirmed that not even Scorpio will have this. So, if you want to continue playing these games on these platforms, you can't use the same excuses from last gen, because it's not the same as last gen. The manufacturers and developers all learned their lessons. You all should too. Yules 1 out.